You're live. Rob, you're live. Why is
Do it.
I'm like, why is it so hard? I don't have enough. No, it was how they were like that. And like they're yeah. Ish. Eight, which is like, I don't, yeah, is both 10 minutes and knit one.
No, I thought Rob would be here
Oh,
first.
okay.
Both, because I think some people sometimes confuse AI and automation, but I mean, automation's been, I mean, AI's been around for a long time, but automation's been around with us for a while too. Are you integrating sort of both disciplines within sort of what you guys are doing? And I know there's a scary, like, yeah, I hear you on the AI stuff, you know, even from an agency perspective, right? It's like everyone can write a blog and everyone's think they can design a website. It's not that easy yet.
Yeah.
But are you integrating like automation into these web forms that you're doing as in addition to AI?
Yeah, it kind of goes the full spectrum down from, simple things like when a thing happens, automatically do this other thing. That doesn't
Yeah.
need a lot of AI.
Right.
But you can start to layer in some AI to help with some tasks that either automation is difficult to do without AI, or it just is a lot easier to do with AI, right up to you actually kind of need AI to do the kinds of new workflows that AI enables. Just a new way of doing things that you wouldn't really been able to do in the past without like gads and gads of money to pour into automating things. I would say it goes like just the full spectrum. And I think what's interesting about it right now is that it actually really needs that full spectrum. Like you can't just like plunk in AI and it just works. You need some glue, you need some scaffolding, you need some help putting things together to make sure it's not going to go off the rails and do sort of weird stuff, which we've seen happen. But at the same time, even going whole hog into AI and having vibe coding up an app, it's kind of hard to get it into a place that's ready for production or ready for a bunch of users to come on board. And that's where we hope to be able to help out.
Love it. So I can't wait to the day that I have an avatar that does all my meetings and I can be sitting on the beach. But till then, I'm excited to see what you're going to present. I'm going to hand over the keys to you. You can share your screen and I'll jump back on at the end and we can have a little chat about the learnings we're having from you today.
Yeah, perfect. Let me just get going here. I think that is working. You should see forms. Perfect. Yeah, and feel free to jump in with questions. I was sort of anticipating, I'm not sure like how this is being delivered, so I was sort of anticipating potentially questions sort of coming up as we go. So Rob, feel free to just jump in with a question if you want. Won't feel quite so lonely up here by myself.
All good.
Yeah, so thanks, Rob, for inviting me in, talking about web forms and AI and how we're thinking about it, and a product that we've started that I'm interested in showing today. But first off, I wanted to talk about some of the ways that forms have just not worked, things that don't make any sense. So one example that I dug out of some archive somewhere is entering your phone number with a series of dropdowns. This is an absolutely horrendous way to collect somebody's phone numbers, but this is a real form that somebody was using to collect a phone number. This doesn't make any sense. Another bad example, entering your birth date by scrolling through a long list of every single day of the year. This is silly. This is apparently from some well-known music artist's webpage to sign up for some merch or something. So I love this example too. Here's a great one. This took us a while to figure out what was going on here, but this is household income organized or basically, sorted alphabetically. So not numerically, it's actually sorted alphabetically. This is a very silly way to collect this kind of information. It requires a lot of scrolling and parsing of this information. The same problem applied to the number of children and the ages of those children in your house. This list is also sorted alphabetically. This is a very strange way to collect this kind of information. Another sort of silly example, a used car dealership where you can browse the inventory by the specific mileage of each car. So these forms, I just like these examples of, these are kind of over the top ways that forms can go awry, and you can basically do very hostile things to your users and force them to pull their hair out because they got to jump through these weird hoops that you maybe didn't even know you were creating. But first of all, so who are we? Two-story robot. We got a little bit of an intro. Thank you, Rob, for allowing me to do that. I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the projects that we've worked on and how we like to fold a lot of that experience into some of the other projects that we take on. So we're a small agency. We're only 9 people, but we've worked with some very big organizations, some big projects. Some of the logos on the screen here. One of the ones we're most proud of, Avalanche Canada. We've worked with them for a number of years in the past, helping them build really advanced data visualization and forecasting tools for their forecasters to protect the public in the mountainous regions during avalanche season. We've done a number of projects with some other folks. The two that I want to specifically mention are Xscaler, that's the one on the bottom left, and Modern Metric, the one on the bottom right. These are ones where we were implementing more AI workflows into actual product. So not just AI to help assist on the back end with tasks and automation, but more putting AI at the forefront of the product. So Xscaler is a European startup. They are basically a climate tech market research tool. And so for them, what we built was an autonomous agent that helps their customers understand the complex nature of international market expansion for clean tech. It's a very complicated set of information that as a customer who has clean tech, say you're launching new solar panels, you can come in, use Xscaler and the agent to help understand and digest how your specific technology applies or is relevant to different new markets, international markets, and which of those markets makes sense to expand to. So that was an interesting project that we built that was agentic. And then the other one, Modern Metric, is a product that we've been working with for a number of years now, or working on for a number of years now. They're a very fast growing insurance agent tool that helps to automate those insurance agents' workflows and get insurance quotes created and sent off to people looking for insurance. So we built their entire platform. So this was more of a traditional code, building software, but we started to talk to them about how to integrate AI into some of the features that the application provides to these insurance agents. And so one of the things that we did was building some tooling that allow the agents to upload client documents, either from the client or from other agencies, and it lets them extract assets and individual details from those documents and insert them into the various providers' databases that they need to coordinate with. And this is turning out to be a very enabling feature for their sales. It's saving hours and hours of individual agent time every single day. And it's a very exciting piece of tech, and we're really excited to watch them grow. Now, let's go back to
Jonathan. I have a question on, can you talk a little bit about, and so hope it's okay that I jumped in, but
yes, please. Yeah,
like, can you talk a little bit about when you're working with these companies, like a little bit of the process you go through without giving away the secret sauce of how you come to the, you know what I mean? The client comes to you with a task, a goal, an issue, whatever it is, and maybe the process you work through to get to the final product, because I think we don't, a lot of times we don't see that, right? Like, you see the end result, but the work your team would do to actually walk the client through that process a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So usually clients come and they have some kind of a vision. They either have a prototype of a product, or they really understand what it is they're trying to do. In some cases, they already have a product and they just need to hire us to help, move along some features or something. But generally, we like to work with customers who have some idea or some version of what it is that they want to build, whether it's an app to help insurance agents or this app to help people expand their clean tech. So we work with them, and we do a number of things. We do design sprints, which help us really transfer a lot of knowledge back and forth really, really quickly and allow us to get up to speed on what their goals are, as well as pushing forward some designs and some ideation around what, like, let's put this into concrete terms. Like, we've got these ideas, we've got this vision, let's put it down on paper and see how it starts to shape up, and what are some of the features that we can start building. From there, we typically start to break all this down into tasks and start to roadmap out what is, how long is this going to take? Is it going to take months? Is it going to take, in the case of Modern Metric, years? In the case of Xscaler, just a couple of weeks. Scale out what this roadmap of milestones there are, and start working towards them with lots of check-in, lots of opportunity to get small features out the door quickly, so that either they can test it themselves or ideally put it in the hands of customers, so that customers can start using it and start testing it, getting that feedback back to us and to our customer, the client, to understand that, this, our shared idea of what this feature was supposed to be actually resonates with the customer or not. And then it allows us to fold all that feedback in and iterate very quickly, trying not to build too much of stuff that nobody wants. And that's how we work.
Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah. Okay, so back to some form stuff. Sorry, I lost where I was. Here we are. So some of the, specifically with forms, we've done a lot of forms in various forms, whether it's like explicitly a form that you would see on the on the web, like a contact form, that kind of thing, to like really complex forms for example, insurance agents to fill out. And they take, they're not just a quick, user, email, phone number, here's the message, but like really complex forms. We've done a lot of this work in all sorts of industries, whether it's, like I said, insurance. We've done a bunch of work in healthcare and education. And some of the pitfalls that we just kind of run into, ourselves included, is I would summarize into the following. And I think this makes sense. I've tried to gear this more towards small business on their forms that they put on their websites. So the three that I sort of identify. Oops, I left my little template in here. So one is having too many required fields. So on your contact form, if you have, you're asking for all of these fields, and every one of them is required, they're probably not that required. Just assess them, see if they actually are optional, and either make them optional or just skip them altogether. Don't ask so many questions on your forms. Giving too many options. So here's another one. I hate the little question at the bottom of all these contact forms. How did you hear about us? And then you open it up because you want to be a nice guy. And you want to like give them the feedback. And then they've listed off, a dozen or so options to fill in. And ultimately you just press other and then just kind of like skip it. So, avoid giving too many options on forms. And then the other one is not having conditional logic in your forms. So if you're going to show all questions to all users, even if it's not always relevant, it's probably just a giant waste of time. Regularly, we'll run into forms where it's just, if this applies to you, fill out this question. So you end up reading something that doesn't apply to you anyways. And sometimes it's marked as required and you can't actually get through the form. But I wanted to share some statistics that I like to pull out every now and again. So abandonment rate. Basically, 81% of people are just going to abandon the form once they start filling that out. Nearly 70% of users will quit the form if they encounter any kind of complication at all. And that can be security concerns. They wonder who this is or what this is. The form is just too long. There's a bunch of unnecessary or irrelevant questions, or it feels like you're sort of upselling or you've actually got an ad in there somehow. So those are reasons why people bail out if the form gets a little too hard. Experts typically suggest that the typical median form conversion of around 3 to 5% sort of depends on context and traffic volume. I think it depends a lot on the industry as well. But some good news is that users overwhelmingly prefer self-service over talking to a human. I think this bodes well for our new robotic overlords. But this seems to be what the evidence shows, that people prefer to fill out forms than to get on the phone or engage in a chat with somebody. I think you could probably recognize this in yourself. I almost always look for a contact form on a website if they have it. The bottom line here is I think that a lot of times you ask your forms to do too much and you make people think too hard. And that makes the forms hard to deal with. And I think if you ask yourself, are you making this easier on them or on you? And if it's just easier for you, then it's probably bad. It's probably not going to work, or it's probably going to affect your conversion rate. So try to simplify these things, make them really easy, simple to do. And I think you will get better results. So now I want to talk a little bit of some simple automations that you can start adding to forms yourself. The two tools I like to recommend, if you're really new to this kind of thing, Zapier is really easy to use. Rob, I think I would imagine you've used some Zapier automations.
Yeah, and make both of these. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Zapier is like just really easy to get started on. I haven't now caveat, I haven't used it in a little while, but at the time it felt like there was, some limits to what you could do. Make allows you to do more complicated things. You can chain together a bunch of different workflows, put in conditional logic to say, if the form looks like this, do this thing, but if the form looks like that, do this other thing. Make has a lot of flexibility in it. But both of these platforms are unowned. We've had a few cases where we've made some automations in Make where we've had to come in and basically replicate that with code, because either the provider that's making that integration no longer supports things, or things change. It just starts to become a little fragile. And so sometimes we pull out of both of these things and just create full on software automations. And if that's something you want to do, you can hire us. We'll come help you do those super complicated things. But here are some automations that we've set up that I use quite frequently, and they're pretty easy to set up with something like Zapier or Make. So one of the things that I think is an underrated feature of some form software is the way in which you notify of a new form submission. If you use Google Forms, you can have them automatically insert into your Google Sheet, and you can probably get them to email you. But if you can get them to message you where you or your team hang out, you can respond super fast. So anytime we have a form that we actually want to respond to or need to do something about, we almost always wire it up to go into a specific channel that's relevant to what we're talking about in Slack. We use Slack. I don't know how this would work in, say, Teams or other messaging tools, or SMS. And so both Make and Zapier allow you to do this. They're pretty easy to wire up. You just, here's the form. When this happens, do this thing. Super easy and probably pretty decent bang for your buck, because you can respond really, really quickly. And then also one of the things that we've noticed is when you're inside of your messaging tools, the ways in which you communicate with your internal team, you can often discuss the thing right then and there in your Slack channel, either assign it to the person that's most relevant, or signal to somebody like, hey, hey, Rob, I think this is actually, you should respond to this. This seems kind of important, if he's not, paying attention. So I like this one a lot. It's something we do basically on every form that we have goes to a Slack channel. One of the, excuse me. So a slightly more advanced automation that you can build in, which does use some AI, is connecting those form responses to some kind of OpenAI or Anthropic call, where you can qualify and rate the response. So if you're collecting some information, you can provide a prompt to your AI call to rate it or give some kind of score to it. And this can be really useful for flagging spam. We have one form that seems to generate a lot of spam submissions, and we just can't seem to bring that down. And so we use an AI automation to just look at it and say, yeah, this is spam. We flag it as spam. Makes it really easy for us to go through and look and decide, yeah, all of these are spam. We can delete them and not deal with them. But also it can identify high value opportunities. So if a form comes in and the prompt is looking for sort of a specific kind of thing, you can do the opposite of flag them as spam, but flag them as more important, either in the messaging that comes into Slack, or in the form itself when we're going through and looking at them sort of end of day or end of week. And this can be really helpful. And there's a number of ways that you can hook up OpenAI to other tools as well. We use a tool internally called Missive to manage our support inbox and our general inbox. So sometimes, we'll get messages that come through our contact form, through some of our other forms, or just directly via an email. And all of those go through an initial flagging system that we have built with Make, that makes a call to OpenAI to just sort of rate it for us. And then it just helps us respond appropriately, rather than spending a ton of time sort of like glazing through this sea of spam, missing maybe the high value opportunity. It just helps us visualize these things a lot faster, and we can respond a lot quicker. And I like these ones. These ones are also pretty easy to wire up, but a little bit more advanced than the previous one. Another one is something that we've seen some success with, and we're going to try it again because we're about to do some hiring for another company, is to score job applicants. So we have a particular way of doing hiring where we ask a set of questions. It's about 3 questions in our application form before we ask for a resume. And we go through and we've got this rubric that we've built, and we assess each applicant. We used to do this by hand. We would assess each applicant, score them on these, across these 3 different rubrics for each of these 3 different questions, calculate a score, sort of decide on what's the threshold that we want to shortlist for, and then contact those candidates for resume and interview and that sort of thing. It's a very time-consuming process. But what we've experimented with is giving that rubric that we've developed that our staff would use to review these job applicants and look at each answer and assess, giving that same rubric to OpenAI and then letting it do play in that game as well and do its own assessment. Typically, these match quite well with our team. We tend to increase lower the threshold for AI just to accept a little bit more, give it a little bit more. We trust it a little bit less than a human, I guess, but it's worked quite well. And so we've got a job posting that we're going to send out in a couple of weeks here. We're going to do a similar kind of thing, reassess if the AI can help us score job applicants, or perhaps just eliminate some of the applicants that we don't want to engage with. So I'm excited about this one. We'll see how it works. Because
on the score job applicant automation, are you custom building that, or is that something that can still be done through a Make or a Zapier? Do you know if you could do? I mean, I assume you can, because if you're using a large language model as a middle, you're training that large language model to understand your rubrics. But are you guys building that custom for you?
We have built it custom, but there's no reason why this couldn't work through Make. So basically, there's a number of ways I would approach setting it up with something like Make. I don't think you would be able to do this very easily in Zapier, but in Make, you could, for every response that comes in on your form, you send the whole thing off to an OpenAI call. You've given it a prompt and a rubric that says, assess this response according to this rubric, and you'll get something back. You'll have to do a few more steps in your Make workflow to take that response and then put it back into your spreadsheet. But that's something that would be very doable inside of Make. We just happen to have done it in code because
for sure. Interesting. This is a really interesting an application for an applicant. So it's actually a really neat automation. So thanks.
Yeah, it's something that we've done in a number of different places, not always for job applicants, but we often feed inbound things, whether it's from our forms or from our email, through an AI screening process. Like I said, just to give some initial assessment, whether it's clearly spam or clearly low value, right? There's some stuff that kind of like, we're not really sure if it's spam or not, but it's like not something we're interested in. And it does a pretty good job of filtering all those things out so that we can really just focus on the good stuff. And then again, sort of starting to experiment with, can we use those to not just filter out the bottom, but also help prioritize the top.
Interesting. Yeah, it's cool.
Oops, wrong way. So also here's the little plug. You could just hire us. We'll do this for you. We also build apps. We can build very complex apps for you. And this was where I was going to take a quick pause to see if there's any questions. But Rob, you've asked a good question. I don't know if anybody else wants to ask any questions that's on the call, or if Rob has any others.
I don't see any questions coming through, but yeah, if there's anything they can reach out, I can have a look into the comment section as well. But yeah, and if I have other questions, I'll jump in. So
sounds good. Okay, so I wanted to talk about a new product that we have built. It's not quite launched. I wouldn't say we're launching it. It's in like an early testing stage right now. And it is, well, it's called Tada form, and it is a AI native form tool. So Google Forms, most of the form tools you use, you set the question type, you collect the answers, and you do that question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4, whether you have drop downs or big text boxes, you define the form, and then you put the form on your website or send it out to people to complete. It's basically a static form. It doesn't change. And so you have to, like, if you go back to some of those earlier lessons that I shared, you have to anticipate the way people are going to use it, and you can't always get it right 100% of the time. And you're going to end up building either a very, very generic form that doesn't really collect the information that you want to, or a very, very specific form that kind of irritates a bunch of other people because it doesn't fit them. And so my vision for this is something that is AI native. And so the way I've been thinking about this is that basically the form is defined as a goal. It has a goal to collect certain kinds of information so that you, as the form author or the form owner, can do the thing that you want to do. So an example might be if you are doing client intake, you maybe have a somewhat complex client intake process. I wouldn't say it's like super onerous, but it's a bit complex. And you've got, these various different kinds of clients that come in through your door. Either they're sort of low market clients or mid market or high value clients. And those types of clients you might ask different questions of. And so you could accomplish this with a traditional form with branching logic, but you still have to ask them, like, are you this kind of customer? Are you this kind of customer? And then sort of figure out ahead of time where they might flow through. So the way Tada form works is you just define a goal and optionally the first question. And then when a user comes to complete the form, they answer that first question. And then the next question is generated for you by AI. In support of that goal. So, and then it proceeds to ask questions until it feels like it's achieved its goal or it's hit the question limit, because we don't want these things to go on forever. We don't want to have long, lengthy forms that take forever to complete. And what is interesting about this is in testing that it can really probe deep to things that are really specific to that set of answers for that customer. And I'll give a light example. Here. So here's an example of one of the form flows. I've had to simplify it because the responses and the questions were a little longer than this, but it's basically, it looks like this. So the first question for this form. So one of our teammates is a coach, an athletic coach, and we have a lot of triathletes on the team. So we often sort of do this kind of examples. But she's a coach, and she wanted to see if we could get better intake process for new athletes coming in to consume her coaching services. So the first question was, what is your main athletic goal for the year? And then the user responded, in this case, I want to complete my first half Ironman triathlon. So that's sort of the canned bit. That's all the predetermined bit. Everything after this is generated by AI. So then the AI returned another question that asked a very specific question about triathlon. How much are you currently training for each swimming, biking, and running? So then the user answers about 3 hours of cycling, 2 hours running each week, but barely any swimming. And then a follow-up question was, how, have you completed any triathlon races in the past? And, the user answers this. This actually went on for a little bit longer than this, but I didn't want to pollute the screen too much. But the questions respond directly to the answers given by the user. And then I'll show another example of the same form, but a different user filling it out. So again, same first question, what's your main athletic goal for this year? I'm looking to qualify for the Boston Marathon. So not a triathlete, this is just a runner. And so then sort of the AI, I think, did a pretty good job of determining that this is probably a high performance athlete. So questioned about what their most recent race time was. And so the response was a 3:30 marathon. I can't do a 3:30 marathon. I wish I could. That was pretty fast. And then following up with, how much training can you devote per week over the next 12 weeks? And, 10 to 15, but I have a 6-year-old. And then it did ask some other questions around, flexibility and that kind of thing. And so the what I wanted to show here is that it's the same form, but it's collecting very different information from each user. And then at the end, what it does is it synthesizes those results and gives them back to the author, the owner of the form, to say, here's this person, this is what their goals are, this is what they're aiming for, and make a recommendation on what to do. And it would be different for this user here who's got some experience but not a lot. That recommendation might be engage at this level or whatever. Whereas this person might be a little bit more motivated to actually consume high performance coaching services and fit to a more structured plan and have more availability for performance. So that's an example use case of this form in action.
Hey, Jonathan, yeah, interesting. So I have a question. Is the idea, I know it's in beta right now, but would this be an embed right into your website potentially? Is that sort of the idea? Is that
that's the goal? Yeah. There's no reason why it can't be now. It's just we haven't really tested any of that stuff out. It's just we have the form logic, so it will generate open-ended questions, and it's steered to try and engage. Ask questions that elicit more detail in the user's responses, and then it synthesizes it all. So yeah, it could be embedded. It could be just here's a link to a form. You could send it in an email. All of that sort of Chrome and stylistic stuff is something that we'd be eager to sort out. But our main goal is to try and figure out the use cases for this and how or if this can work for different small businesses.
That's very interesting. So that's very cool, actually. And are you having to sort of like train the model, for lack of a better word, the Terraform on like the knowledge, or is it really you could implement this like really quickly into a client's usage?
Yeah, we can implement it really quickly into a client's usage. So I had somebody when I was showing this to a friend who's in land surveying. He said, "Oh, this could be interesting for land surveying because we get a lot of variety of requests." I don't understand anything about land surveying, but right. He said, "Yeah, we get these sort of random requests, everything from we need to do really complicated surveying to we just need to come and measure the property line because the neighbors are fighting." Right.
Right.
And so I spent about a half an hour sort of like trying to figure out what the prompt might be. Again, this was very early stages or early days. Crafted the prompt, gave him the form to try out. He took on the persona of these two different kinds of customers. The first case, feuding neighbors, it was pretty straightforward. It's sort of like, yeah, we just need to come and assess this stuff. That was a pretty straightforward thing. But then he went to the more complex use case, and the form questions were very specifically. It just sort of assumed that there was some understanding because of the way in which the initial question was answered, that, oh, this person is looking for surveying capabilities. And it asked questions that were very, very relevant about the type of surveying, whether it was like total station or GPS, which again, I don't know what that is, but the form knew what that was and said, yeah, is this the kind of thing you wanted? And he was kind of impressed because that's not a question that they ask on their forms. It's usually something that they ask once they've like filled out the generic form. They do a phone call and say, what are you looking for? And they have this list of criteria that they go through. And so the AI was able to just determine that question based on the context of both the prompt that we gave it and the answer that the user, or in this case, the persona, my friend, filled it in as, and it did a pretty good job. So it works quite well in a lot of different use cases because the model has already been trained on like all human knowledge, right, up until whatever the cutoff point is.
Very cool. And then I think you had referenced what you want to do with the data. That's the next step. As now you're collecting all this interaction, this form, then the result, you can customize what it is. If it's going back to the business, if it's a response to the consumer with an action plan or whatever it may be that's built into it, you can kind of whatever you do with the data then is sort of the next step.
Yeah, the nice thing is that you can get, again, I want some early testers to sort of
Yeah.
prove this hypothesis out, but I think that you can have your cake and eat it too in some ways, where you can collect rich data that is unstructured, but still get the structured data that you need out of it. So if you need to collect, business size, age, rank, serial number,
Right.
that kind of thing, this can ask it and collect it, but not necessarily in a way that's like super structured. And
Right.
it will try to collect that information and then provide you with that structured data, but as well, it'll also provide you with richer data about other things like this. Like I have a 6-year-old. So flexibility is important, right? Like you may have anticipated something like that and put that on your sort of traditional form. But if somebody thinks to sort of offer that up, now the form can respond to that and perhaps offer a different result or a different deliverable.
Very cool. Yeah, it's almost like you're having more of a conversation, but you're still collecting the data at the same time.
Yeah, it is a little bit like a chat bot
Yeah.
experience. It's not functionally, it's not really that different.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, I don't know if it just makes more sense to put it in a chat bot, but this works, and there's a bunch of other, I think, some other tooling we can do on the other end of this. Once you've received, once somebody's completed the form, we can do a bunch of interesting things that I think sort of the generic chatbots might not be able to do quite as well. So some of the use cases I've thought of, excuse me, and it's sort of based on the way we've been using not this product, but this has come out of like an internal, I wouldn't say product, but like an internal project that we've built. So we have a pretty complex client intake process. It's, we have our contact form, or we've got our leads coming in somewhere, and we will email them, and they'll come back with like, here's the app we want to build. Here's, we want this feature, and this feature, and, whatever. And invariably, we just have to get on a phone call with them. We have to get on an hour-long phone call and talk through some of the features, because they never disclose everything quite fully, and they always have some mismatch in terms of expectations and reality. And so we've got to get on the phone and have a meeting with them. And so what we tried doing was using not this form process, but something very similar, to get a customer to go through the process like this, where it basically interviewed them, and we got out of it much more detailed understanding of what the application that they were looking for was going to be. We got a better understanding of the features. The AI prompted them to think about, users and the industry and all these other things that they just would never have disclosed to us on a contact form. And it resulted in, we think, just a shorter amount of time on our end dealing with these customers. Ultimately, what it ended up doing is sort of filtering out some of the lower end customers that we sometimes get filling out our forms, where they typically only have a budget of $500 or $1,000 or something, and that's not typically where we work. But it allows us to determine that with a form rather than an hour-long meeting. And so that was really nice. So one of the things that we started to do as a follow-up to that, so that's this use case, this sort of complex client intake process. I think the same might apply for coaching, for example. But what we did on our use case for new clients looking to build software, build applications, is once we've got them through the process, and we've the form has collected this rich information, we can then feed that directly into another automation, again, that's AI powered, to produce digital products. And so two things that we produce out of this is wireframes and spec documents. So like a specification of what the software is supposed to look like. And the goal of these two things is we can hand that off to somebody like a developer, and they can more easily estimate how much budget they think it should take, or what the cost is going to be for this. And again, that process, getting up to like handing something off to a developer to give us an estimate, that takes an hour of meeting with a client. But with this process, that got eliminated, and we could get right into to estimation process really, really fast. And so I think that what you can do with this in certain use cases is, as soon as the person fills out the form and you've collected all of that rich information and the form's been probing and like, oh, what do you think about this? And how do you, how are you approaching this? And, all these deeper questions, you've now got a pretty, like a decent set of knowledge on what that respondent is looking for. You could build a product right then and there for them. So if like a PDF, in our case, wireframes and a spec doc, we could probably just sell that to them right then and there. We can say, here's your wireframe and your spec doc, whatever the price is. I don't know. I don't even know what we would charge for that. Maybe $200, say, I don't know. Here you go. You can iterate on it a little bit, and then you could just take that somewhere else if you wanted to. And we would probably typically reserve that for clients who are at that lower budget, we can't really service anyways. So as a way of maybe monetizing some clients that come through that we just can't service because the budget doesn't match their expectations. But other things like our teammate who's a coach thinks that she could use sort of her process of generating training plans. And so using the form as a weekly check-in with her athletes to refine the existing plan, or present it to her and then she can tweak it. But I think there's a way here to automate the production of these little pieces of assets that you can either give to the customer as a loss leader or as a lead generator, or as a sellable product, like what we might try to do with wireframes. Some other examples, just like you've had an appointment with somebody, send them to the form and they can follow up and sort of see how that appointment, any kind of follow-up steps you might need to verify. Certainly any kind of feedback surveys. I've experimented with this, just myself, just sort of like generating a form for myself to complete a survey on like some service that I've consumed. And I think this does a pretty good job of that, asking poignant questions and generating a nice scored feedback, so that it would either prompt for follow-up to say, hey, let's go get a testimonial from this guy, or maybe send that off to customer success or something to help either with retention or try to figure out how can we get this customer a little bit more, more in the positive side of things, as well as like complex work request forms, where you need to like ask a bunch of different information that may vary depending on who's asking or when or where they are. So yeah, so it's tadaform.com. You can join the waitlist. The waitlist form itself is a Tada form, so it's an AI-powered form. It asks just 3 questions, very simple. If you want to join the waitlist, and I am looking for some folks to engage with me to see if this is something that could fit in either your workflows or, if you're an agency, your customers' workflows. Because I'm really interested in trying to crack this nut a little bit, because it feels like there's some potential here. And I open it up and welcome anybody who wants to come and try it out with me.
I'm curious, Jonathan, because these are AI powered, with the forums, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the word, like what become smarter, are they learning even more as you use them, like, or not? Like, are they?
Not right now. They could. So one of the things, it's one of the things that, like, back to one of your first questions right off the top, is some of the questions we get asked about AI.
Right.
That kind of question gets asked a lot. And the shorter answer is no, that will almost never happen, because the AI models do not learn. Every time you interact with them, it's like they've never seen you before. It's like they've never seen anybody before other than the knowledge that they've had. There are ways to add new information, but that starts to get kind of complex. And there's a bunch of reasons why I don't think you probably actually need to do that. I think what makes more sense is having the human sort of look at how this is coming through, how these responses are coming through, starting to recognize like, oh, okay, I see why it generated this question that was okay, but it could be better. And then you refine the prompt,
Right.
refine the goal of this form, so that the next version is a little bit better.
Interesting. See, and you said, I asked how long your presentation was, Jonathan. You said 20 minutes, and look, it's 3:50.
Perfect. Wait, when did we start? We started at 3. You asked questions.
That's true. That's
So.
true. Um, I'm curious, like, so what kind of, what triggered you to build this? Like, was it because you're struggling with what you showed us at the start? All the forums are like just crap that are out there. Like, what triggered you to say, you know what, I'm gonna build this ta-da forum?
No, all the things, all those silly examples at the beginning, those are just simple usability. Like those are
Right.
design problems. Those are easy to solve. No, the problem was like looking at the types of inbound we get is so vast. We have
Mm,
people who want, like we just, it was a great conversation. It's a very small project that almost sounds like it's a personal project just for personal budgeting, right? It's a very small app. We don't think
yeah.
that there's a lot of scale there, right up to, a customer who is willing to engage at 6 figures and have very complex needs and everything in between. And we spent just as much time at both ends, and ultimately at that lower end, it just didn't, rarely actually led to an engagement. And
Yeah.
so we just, can we make this just a little bit easier on us, and potentially like have something that they can, like, give something of value to these customers that we can't service in other ways. So is there a small product? Because we've shown some people some of the wireframes that we've built through this process. It's all sort of like obscured away in the background. They don't actually
Yeah.
complete the form, but we sort of go through the motions of it, give them these wireframes and these spec docs, and they love them. They think they're great. We're like, okay, awesome. Like, well, we've produced it, and so here you go. You can have it. But maybe that's something that we can monetize and sell, even if it's just a nominal fee, or maybe it's free. I don't know.
Interesting. One of the questions I think that, I mean, we get this all the time, and you might get this with what you're doing here with when you're collecting data. Is there anything we need to be aware of when it comes to privacy, data privacy, compliance, any of that sort of thing when it comes to these forums that clients should be aware of?
Yeah, I think you should, disclose the fact that these are potentially being generated by LLMs.
Okay.
I think that's going to drop your conversion rate a little bit. Um, the insurance customer that we're working with, they have very strict compliance regulations. So they're,
Okay.
I'm forgetting the acronym. We just went through this. SOC 2, sorry, SOC 2 compliant.
Okay.
So I was surprised at how compliant some of the model providers actually are. So depending on your industry, depending on what your privacy, what kind of red tape you have around your
Right.
privacy, some of the models are actually pretty good. And there's a number of ways you can not get around it, but there's other not models, but there's open models that you can use
Right.
where you're not actually connecting to the big, OpenAI or Anthropic or Gemini or whoever. You could run these open models, and I've tried it with Tada Form, and it does a pretty good job. The big frontier models like ChatGPT,
Yeah.
Claude, they do a really good job for those hard use cases that I'm trying. But for
Mhm.
the slightly simpler use cases, the open models actually do a pretty decent job at that. And then you're not sending anybody's data anywhere. It's just all sitting on your data center with your servers.
Love it. I think this is really cool. Like, I think that giving people, even just seeing, I just love that we haven't had someone come on and talk about sort of like a product they're developing, being able to get into a little bit of beta and testing. And I think that's, I don't want to speak for you, but I think you're looking for people to test this thing and try it out and you see if there's use cases for it. So it's a neat position for anyone that's listening to kind of sort of log on and see where there's opportunity for maybe to fit into their business, right? Which is really cool because you typically don't see that. We don't
Yeah,
get.
I'd love to work with just a handful of folks to just see if we can craft this into something that would fit your use case really well. Because if it fits yours, it probably fits a bunch of other people's.
100%.
Um, And I feel like there's some opportunity here to make this a bigger thing than just our silly little, not silly, but like our use case that's just kind of purely internal.
Yeah.
But it's been working really well, and I want to share it somehow with others.
That's fair. Yeah, no, it's great. So yeah, anyone that's on the call that's interested, go to, it's right on the screen. So tadaforum.com. I've pulled it up. You can join the wait list, and if you have questions, you can, reach out to Jonathan and his team there. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer questions and so forth. But I think that's great, Jonathan. I love that. Like I said, thank you for giving us a little bit of the behind the scenes of where you're building. It's kind of neat to see. And like I said, we take this stuff for granted. I think like we go on websites or we build forums and I see they try to ask you everything. Like they want your firstborn, and I think people saw the numbers. Like your conversion rates drop when you do those things. So, but if you can create a system like this that's more interactive and conversational, people might engage better with it, right? So, and that's really the name of the game, right? So,
yeah, I mean, I hope so. I have embraced AI. I think a lot of people have. I think some people won't, and that's maybe fine. But maybe this doesn't work at all, and nobody wants it. But
that's what the fun thing about this. I think that's super
yeah,
cool. Just, I don't know, like you can try this and see where it goes, right? Like I think it's kind of cool that that's just it. I mean, thank you for, bringing it to us and to the people that are listening today and tuning in, because I think it's kind of cool that we, bring it out there, and let's see if there's interest out there, fill it out and see where it goes. So
yeah, awesome.
yeah, cool.
Appreciate it.
Well, Jonathan, hey, thanks for joining. I really appreciate it. Taking the time. And like I said, go to tadaforum.com, twostoryrobot.com as well, if you guys want to know more about Jonathan's day job.
Oh, I've got a lot of day jobs.
Or connect with Jonathan online as well on LinkedIn and so forth as well. So Jonathan, thanks for chatting today. I really enjoyed it. Cool.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Rob. It was a pleasure. Hope you have a great rest of the week.
Awesome. And everyone else, again, yeah, go on to tadaforum.com. And, thanks for joining us. We're taking a few weeks off, and we got an AI boot camp going on next week online. But other than that, no webinars for a couple of weeks, and then we'll be back online in September. So, Jonathan, thanks again. Everyone, thanks for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your night. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Take care. Bye.